Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Amanda Russell, who is an international marketing strategist, speaker, educator, and entrepreneur. Amanda, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, so I'm sure that all of that has quite the long background, and speaker and educator and entrepreneur and strategist, and wow, when do you sleep and how do you fit things into your day? So catch us up to what your background is that led you into this field of focus with influencer marketing.
Yeah, so it's been a very unconventional path. And to give you sort of the bird's eye view, I actually never started out to be an entrepreneur ever. That would have been the furthest thing on my radar. I actually grew up as a competitive runner in a small town in northern Canada, and I was always very, very what's the word for that? Structured would be structured and focused, and running and times and everything was very much fits that mold. And the thing about running is that it's a very objective sport, meaning that there's no subjectivity in it, whether you're successful or you're not in terms of competitive running. A time on a track is a time on a track anywhere in the world. And so coming from a small town, knowing that sport, I could do that, I didn't need resources, that it literally became my ticket out. I learned about something called a scholarship in the United States, and that if I could run certain times, that I could write my ticket to a full scholarship in the U.S. And so running quickly became my identity and my career. And it wasn't until I had a career-ending injury before the 2008 Olympics that basically stopped my career in its tracks. And I went through I would say a full-on identity crisis, where you are so confident in what you're doing, and you know where you're going, and you've got all of this support and all of these people around you, and then within like a day, it's just gone. And that struggle was, I always say that people use all the time that running is this analogy for life, and it's funny because running, which literally was my life, metaphorically became kind of the theme for my life. And it gave way to this failure on this level that I had never experienced before. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I've come this far, I've worked this hard to go home to my small town and live with my parents. Sounds absolutely like the worst thing in the world. Not because my parents aren't great people and I have a great family, but I felt like I had worked so hard to get to achieve a certain level to go back that way. And that's when I decided, okay, well, if I want to do something that I care as much about, and how do I apply, and I think that's where a lot of us get confused too, right? How do I apply what I have done into something else and into business? And I remember thinking, if I can't go to this pinnacle of the athletic world, which I felt was the Olympics for running, then I would like to go to the pinnacle of the corporate world, which in my head, in my dream, was New York City. And so the long story short of it is that I used my running experience to get sponsored by a big consulting firm in New York City. And that's when I really learned the power of influence, because getting a job in New York with no work experience is hard enough. But doing it to have to get a visa sponsored by a big company was really presenting a challenge.
Sure.
And so, so I used what I had. I'm like, well, they don't know me, but they know Nike, which was my sponsor, and they know the Olympics, and they could probably imagine what it might take to be a competitive runner. So I'm not going to compete on experience. I'm going to use that. And those were my very first influencers. Nike, the Olympics, they're not always humans. And I sent a pair of shoes in a box to the three big firms that I wanted to work for. And that box of shoes and a personal note with all of the work ethic and dedication that I had that I could now give solely to their firm got me the interview and eventually got me the job. And that became the beginning of my career that set the stage for my ability to sort of start my own company, to go back to business school, to experiment with different things. And that experience was the start of me being obsessed with this use. I didn't use the term influencer. I used the term force. So what are the forces that affect people's decision-making, your audience's decision-making in the action you want them to happen? So, whether it was the gatekeeper at these firms and using Nike in the Olympics. And then again, when it was my pitching to Trium Entertainment in Los Angeles to be business partners, what were the things that mattered to them and how could I leverage what I had? And so that's sort of the beginnings of the story of how I started my career and pivoted into marketing.
Yeah, well, I love that because it's like a lot of people who are in the military, they come out and they go, wow, I learned so much and structure and organization and confidence and all these things. And those same principles apply in business. Well, same with athleticism. Diligence and discipline and all of these things, positive thinking and all of the ways you succeed in sports definitely translate over. So I love that juxtaposition. And I want to point out something that you said about, we didn't know really that we didn't call it influencer marketing. And reminded me, I was listening to a interview with Joe Polish on I Love Marketing podcast and recently, and he was saying that, he just doesn't call it influencer marketing. And it's because you don't know what you're influencing. You don't know how many people and who the target. So in reality, it should be results, driven. It should be results of the influence. So talk a little about your approach to influencer marketing, because I know you have a different spin on things.
Yeah, I think everybody's got a different outlook, but at the end of the day, I think in order to understand influencer marketing, we must first understand influence, because influence is an outcome, not necessarily a job description or a job title. And so that's why it's so cringeworthy when someone says, I'm an influencer, because how do you know you're an influencer? And what are you influencing? And everybody, at the end of the day, and I was on another podcast and, the host asked me a question, and I guess he came from a PR background, and he said, well, the way that you're defining it, that means that anybody could be an influencer. And I said, yeah, you're right. Because everybody in their own, it depends on the audience, and it depends on what you want to happen. So everybody is an influencer. If you are a son, a daughter, a mother, a father, a coach, a teacher, a colleague, you have influenced somebody's decision in some way. So social media is getting confused as influencer marketing, and size of one's audience is getting confused as influencer, and all of these things. And that was one of the things that I got so passionate about wanting to write this book. And it's interesting because as soon as people initially hear influencer marketing, and then I teach courses on influencer marketing at university, they go, oh, like the eye roll, the cringe, the kind of jokes, snickers about like, are you going to teach me how to build my Instagram selfie following? And that's really not what this is at all.
Well, I think it's interesting that you talk about, the way that you approach influencer marketing, because it really is something that has a lot of misperceptions. You see the people on whatever social media platform standing in front of the Ferrari, standing in front of their mansion, and you're going, is that really yours? Because it could just be posing in front of it, and then really what's the substance of what they're influencing? And to your point, you can be influential over a small group of people, and in many cases that might be the more powerful influencer for your product service, rather than some mega star, whoever that might be, that you agree to pay a bunch of money to be seen holding your handbag or whatever that it is. Because you get some of these mom bloggers or whatever in the smaller realm that go, wow, they're engaged, whereas the big influencer, they're like, oh, we got this pop of whatever, but then it doesn't sustain.
Exactly. And even using the term influencer for somebody that's posing a picture in front of their sports car or whatever, I think we're confusing influencer with social media or content creator, because getting attention and getting engagement is not the same as having influence. So yes. you can be a celebrity all day long. You can have 1 million followers. You can get a ton of buzz and attention, popularity, but it doesn't equate to influence. A great example of this is a client that I had a while back who was on one of the Housewives shows, and she portrayed a lifestyle that was very, very glamorous and very bling bling, and she used to get all kinds of inquiries from like designer handbag brands and designer clothing brands to endorse their product. And when she would pose with, a new handbag and a new outfit, she would get not only all of the, all the attention, all of these like vanity metrics that a lot of companies and agencies are looking for, which is likes and comments and shares. Now they've graduated to, it's not just about followers, but it's about the engagement, this vague term. And then she would get that by any metric of engagement in terms of conversations. Her followers would have conversations amongst themselves about her outfit. But at the end of the day, she couldn't convert one sale. Why? Because her audience was not other women that were spending, $1,000 plus on a handbag.
Yes.
That just wasn't her audience. It was middle to lower income, middle America housewives that only could aspire to that lifestyle. So they would love it and engage with it all day long, but she couldn't sell one bag.
Well, it's kind of like reminds me when you think about, hey, do this pre-campaign testing, do a quick survey to your audience, and hey, here's my new widget. Would you guys buy it? They're like, yeah. And then you launch it and nothing. Well, why is that? Because it's easy to go yes, but it's harder to pull out your credit card and pay for it.
Exactly. Yes. And just that notion that popularity and attention and celebrity is different than influence, I think is a really big deal, and it's something that brands and people have to think about, because what happens in a lot of marketing and in PR and advertising and all of these disciplines that put your product to try to garner awareness and buzz, everybody thinks about buzz. They don't think about what is the behavior we want to achieve. And is it on brand for us? I call it the 3 Bs framework, which I learned from the very first mentor professor of mine, who used the 3 Bs framework to analyze and to evaluate any brand strategy, marketing strategy, ad campaign before either implementing one and or to look at others. And that is, yes, we can look at buzz, but how does that tie back to the brand, and what is the behavior we're trying to achieve? And that would solve so many campaigns that fall flat, or why a marketing campaign gets a bad rep, or what all of the flaws could be overlooked if we really looked at it holistically.
I agree 100%. You need to begin with the end in mind, like we learned from Stephen Covey years ago. And I really resonated with your mention of vanity metrics. So let's dive a little bit deeper into vanity metrics, because that has application in anything. Hey, I made $1 million last year in my business. Yahoo! But we spent $1.2 million in expenses. So whatever. Yeah. Hey, we had this many hits on our website. Yay! So what? Did you sell anything? So how does vanity metrics integrate in with what you teach your clients about influencer marketing?
Yeah, and I like that you quoted this, start with the end in mind, and that's actually step one. I wrote in my book, in the code is the goal, and the goal is very different than objective. And the goal is the end result. If you're a for-profit business, your goal is to make money or to increase market share, to increase your bottom line. And we get confused with objectives, which are things like, raise awareness, clicks. Let's get X number of sales. So you said sales don't matter if you're overspending that amount. So you have to start with the actual goal, which is the bottom line, which then dictates your objectives. And some of those objectives then fall into these vanity metrics, right? So they can help. They're like mile markers. They can help the story, but they are not the story. By trying to force those metrics as results, I think tells the wrong story and the wrong campaign, because, one great example that I love is, some of the biggest brands on the planet. Look at PepsiCo. In 2010, we'll go back to 2010 because it was such a big one. They did something that had never been done before, and they pulled their whole Super Bowl ad campaign in favor of this social media campaign. And for its time, it was so advanced, and it did so well on every vanity metric level you can imagine. So they had people interacting. The idea was for people to vote for their favorite charities to give money. And so I think at one point, 1 in every 3 Americans was said to have known about the campaign. So on paper, the ad agency might have won all the awards, but the marketing department's fired. Why? Because Pepsi actually, for the first time in history, lost market share and became number 3 behind Diet Coke. Why? Because the campaign was all about getting these vanity metrics that actually had nothing to do with tying back to buying Pepsi. It had mostly to do with just this buzz and engagement and awareness, but they didn't think about the brand and the behavior.
Well, and then you that makes me think of this, which is so prevalent. Hey, look at that wonderful commercial, that Super Bowl commercial. That's funny, ha ha ha. And you ask the person, oh, what was it, the brand? What were they advertising? I don't know. Puppy Monkey.
Right?
I think that was Mountain Dew, Doritos. I don't know. So it's like, what's the point? You need a clear brand message that maybe is deepened by something fun and exciting. But what is the point if, the bottom line, nobody cares until sales are made?
Exactly. And that's why I think, we can't have marketing or advertising or PR, exist in a silo. It has to be a fundamental business strategy with the bottom line in mind.
Yeah, 100%. Well, listen, I can just tell that this book is chock full of deep thoughts and strategies. So what's the best way people can reach out, connect with you, and learn more about picking up a copy of your book?
Thank you. So you can get that on my website, which you can get there 2 ways, just amandarussell.co, and that's just my name with 2 S's and 2 L's and Russell.co, or the influencer code, which is the name of the book.com. And of course, like everything else is sold on Amazon, but I'm on all major social, and I love this stuff. So questions, examples, I love when people present other, cases and examples. I do make case studies for a living. So, absolutely love, new interesting stories. So please get in touch. If you have
Excellent.
Some really cool, your own business, case studies.
Perfect. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for coming on today. It was really great talking with you.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.